Hello everyone and welcome to another Ascension Messages. My name is Bobbie Richardson. I have a beautiful guest today. I am so excited because it is Mary Rodwell, and I love her so much because she has helped me no end in my journey when I've had numerous occasions of extraterrestrial meetups and visions that I was just trying to get my head around. I would ring up Mary and she would always be an open heart and an open mind to whatever I had to say, and helped me heaps. So I'm so excited to have her. I've known Mary for around 14 years, I think. I'm just going to do a bit of an introduction, and then we will bring her in. So Mary Rodwell is recognised internationally as one of Australia's leading researchers and writers in the UFO and contact phenomenon areas. Mary is the author of a highly acclaimed book, Awakening: How Extraterrestrials Contact Can Transform Your Life, and producer of the EBE award-winning documentaries Expression of ET Contact, A Visual Blueprint, and Expressions of ET Contact, a communication and healing blueprint. She has a book out called The New Human, which was released in 2016. So much. Mary is a founder and a principal of Australia's Close Encounters Resource Network, or ACERN, which was established in 1997. There's so much here. You can go on her website. It is www.alienlady.com/Mary Rodwell. Mary has researched more than 3,000 cases and suggests that extraterrestrial encounters are a global phenomenon, and this is evident in the new humans referred to as star children, which I am now going to bring Mary in because I could just go on and on and on about all the amazing things that she has done. Hello, Mary.
Oh, Bob, it's lovely to see you and talk with you again. As you say, we've got a long association and with you and your family, and I seem to remember some very interesting conversations where we've looked at the family of encounters, and it's been very relevant to you, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because it's only this last year that I just went, that's it. I've had enough of being in hiding. I've had enough. It's like the energy just switched up and I just launched out and I went, it doesn't matter if I'm in hiding or if I'm not, I'm still going to be seen as the black sheep, so to speak, seen as the one that speaks out and be called the fifth element, which I actually didn't mind that name, the fifth element. Always bringing in extraterrestrial, the spiritual side of the conversation. So why not just launch and get all this information out? Because I have been contacted by so many different extraterrestrials throughout my life since I was very little, and so have my children. So very interesting. But I would love to get into more of your story. So how did you start? How did this, really come about for you? Because it must have been, was it just that's it, I'm going to do this, or was it just so many? How did this all happen?
Well, that's a good question. And, to say that for many of us, there's a kind of journey through this kind of process to accept the reality that you've experienced all your life along with your children and what have you, which has not been a conscious thing for me at all, not in that way. I mean, I always grew up being, a conventional religion. So, the spirituality sort of came with that. And I always believed in life after death, but a very contained belief system because of, my family. But what I was I started to challenge it. Interestingly, I mean, I was a nurse and a midwife, so I was doing a very conventional profession. And it wasn't till after I left that to have my kids and I had time to read about things, you know, and you get 5 minutes between the next feed, or you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, books on, you know, the greater reality, paranormal, supernormal, psychic stuff and what have you, because I've always been fascinated to do with all of that. It, you know, it drew me because I wanted to understand why we're here, what it's all about. And one of the pivotal things was picking up a book on reincarnation. Now, in Catholicism, which I grew up with, that was a no-no. You're not allowed to believe in any life except for this one. And yet here I'm reading these stories, and they're extremely compelling, you know, and being validated and explored. And so that opened me up to more of questioning, I suppose. The bottom line was I was asked to learn counselling at the local medical practice in England, and I'd never done counselling. It was all very new then. This is 35 years ago. But I found it fascinating because what I was realising is that, you know, really the end game is medical intervention in most cases, that prevention's better than cure. And if you can prevent illness through dealing with the psychological, emotional issues, then isn't that better than saying, right now, here's a drug to suppress all those conditions that manifested? So I was looking at healing. I was, you know, there were a number of books that were quite profound for me in terms of looking at healing from a sort of multidimensional perspective. Lots of different books I would pick up on energy work, healing, and this kind of thing. We migrated to Australia in '91. I call that my midlife crisis. I suddenly realized that I didn't want to be in this little market town for the rest of my life. I felt we needed a little bit more of an excitement before my kids left home. So we moved to Western Australia, and there I continued with the counselling. And what was interesting, it was grief and bereavement counselling, silver chain. And what was important about that was dealing with people facing their mortality, either knowing that they were going to not be here in a few weeks or a few months, and also people with, you know, severe grief, and all that about belief systems, what happens after death, you know, where are you in all of that? And I would be asked my thoughts when I was helping someone who was having to face all those issues. And it brought into play my own understanding of what, you know, what ultimately do I feel I really believe in all of this. And of course, I've been reading things on reincarnation. To cut a long story short, I started to look into hypnosis and past lives, and I decided I would learn how to do all of that, you know, the hypnosis and regressions into past lives. But also I was looking at things from energy work, you know, people were doing Reiki then, magnified healing. And I was invited to join a group when I was working for a Catholic counselling agency, I won't mention them, where, you know, helping with all these kinds of, you know, family problems and all that kinds of conventional stuff. And a clinical psychologist friend of mine said there's a lady who is being told she's going to teach professionals how to open up their multidimensional selves. And she said, would you like to join us? And of course, right away, I wasn't going to miss out on something like that. I thought, oh, this sounds like my cup of tea, you know, fully believing at the time, you know, that this was a gift, that only certain people had the gift. So my hopes for myself were very limited. But when I started to start the classes, and I did those for 3 years, every week with this group, there was some clinical psychologists, nursing sister, homeopath, trance medium, a really interesting group, coming from both left and right brain perspectives. And we did everything, energy work, opened up to our guides, all this kind of thing. And what it proved, I mean, I had certain experiences where I was questioning whether this was real or not, that absolutely convinced me that I wasn't making this up, that there were things coming out my mouth that I knew nothing of, but, you know. So what it proved to me, and this is really important, I feel, it proved to me that everyone has this ability. Because if you've got a very, I saw myself as very grounded, down to earth kind of female, you know, ex-nurse, whatever. That's my perception of myself. And for me to find that I was feeling this, feeling energies, feeling, you know, and getting information out of nowhere, as it seemed, I thought, well, if I can do that and it can be accurate, then everyone can do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was my so what happened from that was I was asked to teach some groups. One of them was a very professional group, left brainers, and the right brainers, creative intuitives, and I'd be bringing the creative intuitives into the left brain and grounding them, and the left brainers out into the multidimensional world. Because my thing was, what do I do with it? What do I do with this ability? I'm a counsellor.
That's a brilliant thing to do, to bring them both together like that, because that's what we literally have within our brains. So when you're bringing those two people together, they're now facing off with the opposite side of their brain that they're not tapping into or tuning in with. That's clever. Yeah.
Well, what was interesting for me is we've got with the creative intuitives, they often want to stay not here because they don't like planet Earth. So you've got to bring them down into 3D and say, sorry, but you chose to come here in the first place, so you can't run away from it. And with the left brain as being so programmed out of their awareness, they've got to rediscover that part of themselves that can operate in that way. And the big challenge for me that proved to me more than anything of its reality was I didn't know when I walked in a class what would happen, because everything was orchestrated by the team, you know, and I had to rely totally on that. Yes. And it gave me a huge amount of trust ultimately in the sources that I was tapping into, which would come for a meditation, they would come in for whatever was going on that I didn't understand, and all these kinds of things. But what led me to going from spirit, what we would see, that some would only see that as the spiritual side, you know, the ascended masters, the angels, the fairies, or religious figures, or, you know, all those different things, was that we were already perceiving non-human intelligences, you know, there would be certain ones that would introduce themselves in that kind of way. But I never quite looked at it from any other perspective but that, until during that time I'd read a couple of books. One was by Dr. John Mack, Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens, and he was a professor of psychiatry at Harvard University. And that was very powerful, thinking, oh, people have these experiences. And of course Whitley Strieber's book Communion, which were the classic ET face on the front. I read them out of, you know how you pick up books you're meant to. Well, I picked these two up. And literally within a few weeks of that, a gentleman walked through the door and he said to me that, you know, I've heard you're open-minded. For this, there's no support groups. For this, they just think you're crazy. And proceeded to tell me he'd wake up with marks on his body, shaved areas. His partner was having experiences. The children were having experiences. And so this is very clear to me. This was not just one man's hallucination. This was a family affair. And he was very grounded, very articulate. In fact, he's a long-term friend of mine now. He lives in England now. He's an author of books himself. But what that did was open me up to, so what is this? And I was doing advanced counselling at the Wesley Institute at the time, and I took his case to the Wesley Institute as a case study. And there was psychologists and social workers and all these people, and I'm thinking, well, they'll either tell me one way or another whether this guy's, you know, what they think. I didn't for 1 minute think he was anything other than absolutely credible, because I was talking to him and I was listening to his story, and I knew this was a whole family. So I had to see it. Sorry?
You can feel it. You can feel it off people when they're being deceitful. I mean, you can say the most logical thing to someone. I can feel it when someone's being deceitful. Most people can. It's just that if it doesn't integrate in your logical mind and be able to handle that in a story for yourself, then you twist it into, well, that cannot be. So then I'm going to believe the other side. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is when you've been working with people in a counselling role for X number of years, you soon get the sense when someone's coming from, you know, that congruent place of their truth. You just know that they are. So I took this, being very brave, thinking I'm taking this really interesting case, not sure what on earth they would think, because it was so out of the norm. But I thought it's come up, it's an issue. I'm in supervision. They want to study. I'm going for it, you see. And what was fascinating was when I shared the story, every single one but the uniting minister came up with weird stories about their own either haunted house they were in, or spirits, or some other.
That, doesn't it? Yeah, just like you do one brave thing like that, and everyone comes out of the woodwork with their story that we've been told to not say anything about, but this person can handle it, so I can at least upload it to somebody. Yeah, well done you.
Well, it was fascinating. None of them suggested that this gentleman was crazy. Not one.
Wow. I'm surprised to hear that, actually.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised because I was expecting something quite different, given the conventional setup.
Yeah.
But what it showed was, more than anything, is they had no answers, no way of guiding me, nothing. And I then started to look overseas for, and Dr. John Mack had an organization called Peer, where you could get information from his organization. There was another one as well, Asset. There was another organization that was encouraging professionals to look into it. So that gave me my grounding. But, you know, within 2 weeks, somebody else walked through the door having experiences. And then I met a social worker having experiences. And we did the first abduction support group where 12 people turned up. So it just exploded. And I started to realize this wasn't a rarity at all, that this was actually a lot more common than I'd ever realized. And why I created, you know, a CERN was I realized that for many people seeking answers, they were afraid to go to a psychologist or psychiatrist because we knew what the outcome of that would be. Often as not always, but often as not. Where else do you go to get support? You know, and you know, I offered professional counselling. So it was like, and the fact that I was looking into this and offering them a non-judgmental ear to share their stories. And initially, that was the most important thing, was giving them a place where they could say whatever they needed to say without somebody rolling their eyes and thinking that person, you know, was crazy. Because to them, often, you know, there were family that didn't want to hear it, partners didn't want to hear it, children, you know, if they were older, children didn't want, you know. That's so you've got all this judgment. Because the family is always trying around it
you to make sure that you still fit into society so that you won't be condemned. So there's that overprotectiveness. Yeah, and like even within my own intuitive counseling sessions that I do with psychic readings and stuff, I'm finding, because I'm helping a lot of the light workers that are starting to come up with, holy crap, you know, new gifts coming on board, and the fear of all that that's happening, when what actually is happening to them when that's, you know, when they've woken up and seen like codes in front of their face and all sorts of things that are happening now. Because I've been through the journey already, my guides took me on the journey so that I can go full circle, come back and then say, okay, the ones that are coming through, these, especially these new energies at the moment, but all the star children that you have interviewed and everyone will be coming forth now with more and more of their authentic self, stepping into their power, becoming more, realizing that their feminine side and their intuitive guidance is on par, but then having to still be able to ground it into this reality, create something from it. It's all about the adventure and creating a new adventure, stopping with looking outside yourself for somebody else to dictate how your adventure is going to be written, you taking the reins to your own adventure. So I'm sure a lot of the people that you've helped, a lot of the children that you've helped would be sitting there going, thank God I've met Mary on that journey that I went on, especially because that's how I feel, to be actually able to say something to somebody on that journey, so that now that we're stepping into our power and becoming, you know, the next generation of creating something brand new on this beautiful world with Gaia, with Mother Earth, and with other extraterrestrials contacting and talking to us as well. They would be so grateful for you, Mary.
Well, I think for me, if I did nothing else but was an open, non-judgmental ear to hearing someone's story, I think that in itself is so healing. And I've met so many people thinking it's just them. There's no one else. They're totally alone on this planet. They don't feel like they belong. They feel all absolutely alien, excuse the pun, on this planet. And I don't like being here. And I've never felt the same as anybody else. And, you know, and they feeling so isolated because of that. So
the message that I got for that was, sorry, Mary, the message that I got for that was because as star children or star people, as people come from higher frequencies, when their soul came through, they couldn't be put in a family, their own soul pod, because we came down with specific message to be able to share. So we had to be separated into around the world and put in these different families that we had, you know, maybe observed and felt like that was a good place to go into to help that dynamic of that family, and also learn a lot about ourselves and lose ourselves so that we could find ourselves. But we had to be separated, so there was no actual soul family person, not many people. And then incredibly later on, they did start to come in together. So you would have maybe an indigo and a crystal. So you would have sort of a different dynamic, but a different energy, but still from a higher frequency coming in as we progressed. But I know with my age, you know, I'm 54, definitely it was just me on my own. Hello world. And I really did feel like, I was wondering, yeah, am I the only human? I was actually thinking I was the only human. I thought the other way around. Yeah, when I was little.
And I think that is what's happening now, is because so many more of the newer, you know, the younger, the recent generations, there's so many of them coming in. But unfortunately, what you and I both know is because they're so different, and as you say, a high frequency, they are so much more aware and they are wired differently. They're given a hard time because they're not quite normal in the way that third dimensional models decide human normal should be. So we've got all these
the box, the proverbial society box, but they're not supposed to. They're supposed to come through and also hold frequency of where they've come from. They will have, like, I know I have blissful moments of memory. I know that that's my home, and I know that that's my compass. That's where I'm going to. And the more I bring that blissful feeling into my reality, the more it grounds it on this reality and becomes my reality. And that's what they're here to do as well, to bring that. I feel that's what they're here to do as well. So they might feel there's an upside and a downside. So the downside, they're all by themselves, but the upside is they get washed over with these blissful feelings, right, of their home, and being able to, oh my God, that's such a great feeling, without any sort of drug, obviously, or anything like that. It's just who they are at the soul level, and their memory, their imagination, and well, I've been told imagination is more than what they've been telling us. Imagination is also soul memory, from when your soul has been in different planets and different places, different frequencies. So they're starting to have that soul memory come back through those frequencies that they're feeling. And then how do we ground that? How do we become that? How do we share it with the world? Yeah.
I think for me, my role has been, more than anything, is to gather the research and the information that will help those that are waking up to their soul mandate, if you like, to find a way of grounding that through validation, through knowing they're not
beautiful
them, so that they can look at the thing and think, oh, so somebody else has that. Yay. Oh my goodness, somebody else feels that. Oh my goodness. And it's a revelation to so many feeling isolated. And that was, of course, why I created the questionnaires that aren't the same as most questionnaires, because it takes in feeling, knowing, senses, dreams, and all those things that we connect to on an intuitive level.
I haven't done that questionnaire. I'll have to have a look at it.
Well, I did. The reason I put it together was there are a lot of what I call the standard questionnaires about this whole subject, you know, which I call the nuts and bolts. You know, oh, did you see a strange light in the sky? How long did you see it for? How far away was it? You know, how many of you saw it? This kind of very tangible 3D perspective, which is important in terms of research, but what they're not taking in is all the other things, because it's less substantial in that kind of mindset. What we discovered, for example, is when we did the surveys for the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, that was 4,200, 300 people, 600 questions. We discovered something that had not been known before, that out of their conscious memory of that number, which was global, 75% had encounters out of body, not physical. So only 25% of the time do you go physically on board spacecraft. The rest of the time, it's your consciousness. And of course, where do you put that in a nuts and bolts perspective?
Yeah.
You've got to take in the whole thing of consciousness then. And at the moment, that's still a word that some scientists really struggle with, although we're looking at that, and we have to now, because a lot of these experiences people are writing about and sharing now, such as near-death experiences, astral traveling, or remote viewing, or shamanic experiences, or channeling, or anything, clairvoyance, all of those things fit into that box we call human consciousness, which is far more difficult to evaluate simply because of what we're talking about, which is a multidimensional experience.
Yes.
That is coming from all that side of ourselves that is not from our physical senses. And of course, we have a Western model of psychology that doesn't allow you to have anything out of your five senses. It's got to be something that's perceived through senses, not your multidimensional ones, because at the moment that's still not given the validity that it should do, because we are not our physical container. This is just the suit that enables us to.
They've logified it, haven't they? They have to, only because the logic was the one that was in charge, so it's the only one that could compartmentalize everything, and it couldn't compartmentalize something that's coming from that right hemisphere that's been shut down because or taken over, because that right hemisphere's job was to connect to the soul and to be able to read through to benevolent beings and be able to use your intuition and your imagination in a wise manner. But then they had to logify it because they had nothing else to go by. But the whole point of this that we're in right now, that we're stepping in right now, is for our logic to start to make sense of this, and for our intuition to allow everything to be grounded into the logic of creating this reality from birth to death and having a story develop. So it's an integration that's happening at the moment. And I think that's, you know, most of the light workers, so to speak, would have been more in a feminine nature that have come here because it was the out of balance of humanity in their logical brain and where that had taken over. So most of the light workers that came through had a lot more of the information that's pulled out through even Atlantis, Lemuria, Palladian, all the feminine side of things, so that we can start to see the proof and the power behind that and have an understanding of where it fits in human psychology, of being able to step into the next phase of creation rather than, well, if the logical mind has power, it usually would feed off the right hemisphere to gain imagination. That would be how it would work. But because it wasn't, it had to look outside itself for leadership. Then leaders were ignited. You know, we end up having leaders that were coming from their lack of their feminine side. And so we ended up being guided by people that were just making us feel smaller and smaller within that right hemisphere, that feminine side of ourselves. It's really interesting, the story that starts to develop when you go into the maze of humanity and their journey, and then start to see that there's a light at the end of this tunnel. And it is so amazing, because I don't know if you find this, Mary, but I find humans have the best imagination. We have the ability to be able to not just create a glass, it could be a beautiful glass. You know, we just go beyond with our creativity, and being able to create a world around us is just fabulous. So there's so much of that still to come. Can you imagine how much we're going to create when we get that into balance? We've already created all of this. I take my hat off to humanity. I've always said that. Look how much humanity has created it just from a logical point of view. It's incredible. Yeah.
My main understanding of the reasons why that's been shut down is because of the those that wish to control everything have really stepped on all the creative side, your imagination, your connection to source, your connection to your essence, all of those things, so that you could be put in a box and being told to stay there. And that's happening with education, all the different areas of what we call human knowledge, and people have been connecting and that, honoring that. And look what happened with a lot of the religions. They clamped down on anyone who was intuitive or was trusting their connection source, because then you're not doing as you're told.
Yeah.
You know, you're not following the rules.
Yeah. I also got this information that we have actually learned all about our right hemisphere. We actually went on this massive journey, and they showed me like a donut shape, like a torus. And they always said that we've come from learning from God's source itself, splitting itself into, you know, creation and all of this. And humanity as a whole has gone on this journey of learning all about their right hemisphere. So all about Atlantis, Lemuria, all that sort of stuff. And then it got to a point where logic wanted to have a play, you know, a bit more of a play, and it started meddling, and humanity started to meddle. So then we had to be locked down in retrospect of our right hemisphere, so we didn't meddle into different dimensional aspects of ourselves. So that lockdown ended up creating the journey or the story of being taken over by something outside of us, because we no longer could, we no longer had telepathy, we could connect to our soul. So we ended up going, who's going to look after us, you know? And so that team of people specifically came because the energy was that's what source energy wanted us to go through. And then we ended up we're coming out of that now. We're literally, I had this amazing experience where I was shown Gaia herself just entering the vortex of that Taurus belt on March the 28th in 2020, just before the COVID, just when the COVID was coming on board, because we were now going to have everything mirrored against us, mirrored towards us. So as we came through, we're put in lockdown, right? Our right hemisphere was put in lockdown. It's right in front of us. Where do we go? We go home. We have to go back to source energy, back to love, back to loving everything about ourselves, because that's what we were denying. We were denying loving. Humanity was denying loving half of who we were, that intuitive, amazing, imaginative side. And so when that all comes back into balance, this is all about a new journey. Now, what are we going to, do next? What's our next journey? That's how I see it.
I think that the guidance of our next journey, and I believe we've all chosen, as you do, that we've come here with certain skills to be part of this shift in consciousness. And we've all got different skills to assist with that. The new ones coming in, like have all got different skills depending on where they've come from and what their particular soul mandate is. They've come in, as you know, very well, very awake and what have you. And the rest of us older models are being activated and woken up. And I think for me, the evidence of that is how much more this has been normalized. This more and more people are stepping out now and like you've done and said, I no longer I'm going to keep quiet about my truth. And, there's been some amazing shifts and quite a few of them told me it all happened around 2012 for a lot of people. There was something that happened for them around that time. Not everyone, but some have had this amazing 180-degree turn in what matters in life to them. And they've gone from a materialistic lifestyle to a holistic one, where everything has changed, focus and what have you. And that to me has been the most exciting thing, is to see how people are embracing more of that multidimensional awareness that they're experiencing. And it's becoming more and more accepted. I mean, you look at yourself and many others. I mean, if we spoke about this 5 or 10 years ago, there would have been a completely different reaction to it. And I've seen now, it's no longer quite as strange to people. It's almost like there is a new level of openness and acceptance to this truth. And I've always said disclosure is going to happen from the ground up. It's not going to be governments coming out and saying, well, they're trying to give us drip feeds of, oh yes, we see these strange lights. We don't know what they are, lying through their teeth, because they know exactly what they are. But I've always said, really, it's this groundswell of people being woken or woken up and saying, do you know what? I'm not hiding my, and the people are writing books about their experiences and going into a great deal of depth, not, your standard, what I call the standard story. They're explaining, some of them have felt, that they're hybrids, we've got those talking about being walk-ins. A lot of these, soul consciousness and what have you, concepts that would have never been spoken about openly, certainly not maybe 10 or 15 years ago. That's what is exciting.
Yes, yeah, it is. And that's what's opening up humanity to starting to have more acceptance. It's just like everything, I suppose, as humanity's gone along on their journey, the flat earth turned into the round earth, turned into and now we're talking multidimensional with CERN and everything. And so there's a lot, and quantum physics coming into it. So there's a lot more, like you say, depth, but also those experiences. Like I was approached by beings that told me that the governments would fall years ago, And I'm like, really? The governments are going to fall? Now I can see the window cracking, you know, I can see because the energies have shifted so much and we are faced off with truth. We can still decide not to look at that truth, but it is right in front of us. And with that, when somebody tries to manipulate someone, it's literally smack back in their face nowadays at this moment. That's what this energy is about. If you don't come back into love, into who you are and the essence of that, then anything that's distorted will be slapped back at you until you get the picture, until you realize where you're lacking in that love. And because that's who we are. We just love source energy. When we connect back to our soul, source energy is love. It wants to create, it wants to explore and have an adventure. But then again, there's no judgment on anyone that takes that distorted route away from love, because source energy obviously wanted to create that, wanted to have that experience as well. We're just avatars. As soon as our soul leaves our body falls to the ground. That in itself says that there is some essence there that is valuable, because it holds our body up and gives us a spark in our eyes.
Absolutely. And I think when people are really understanding that this is just the vehicle that we've chosen to help us learn and grow, and as you say, there will be some that choose not to follow the path of what people are calling awakening or ascension, but choose to stay within this other frequency, that's okay too, because each soul has a different, you know, we've all chosen what we want to achieve in this lifetime. And for some, there's been that choice that I want to stay within that mindset or that particular paradigm for this particular life. And that's okay. You know, it's not about everyone's going to want to do the same thing. That's why we've come in as different aspects of our souls, so that we can experience different things. And I think that when you talk about love is really about unconditional acceptance of everyone as being part of the whole, that there is no, you know, there's no judgment with any of that, other than some people have chosen a harder road to walk than others. And that's why we're all having different experiences and have different perceptions of those experiences, you know. And in our human self, sometimes that is challenging, particularly if you've got people close to you who are taking different roads down there, and it's about letting go and knowing on a deeper level they're following their soul's path, even though that's difficult in a very human way to deal with.
I do believe, like, a lot of the soul, the light workers and those higher frequencies souls that have come here now looking at seeking other soul tribe members, because we're starting to remember that there are others like us, through people like you that have done this amazing work. And when that happens, and I feel this is one reason why they put us into lockdown as well, but it kind of goes symbiotic together. When the light workers are ready to meet each other's soul tribe, then it'll happen anyway. But when we meet, actually physically meet, I think that's going to be a big shift on Earth, because at the moment we talk and we can go on Zoom and we can meet and we can sort of suss each other out, but we're not. But that physical meetup is going to be a big shift on Earth. And then there's going to be more waves of people waking up. Like I always see it as energy waves coming to Earth and different frequencies. And they showed me, Palladians showed me going right back to what this whole creation was. They just said, they can only show me in 3D. If you just imagine white light and then have a human body, because that's, you know, what my brain could handle, lying down, that wanted to experience more of itself. So it covered its leg with a blanket, which was all black underneath. And then to be able to see the leg, it pinprick, they showed me pinpricks in the blanket. They said, they're your stars. So whenever source energy wants to shift frequency, it'll shift it through the portal of the stars to the planet and to the beings on those planets. And so these waves of energy are coming at us at the moment with different lessons and different, you know, we're all, it's how we use them. How are we utilizing these new waves of energy that are coming? Are we utilizing them to stay stuck and feel like everything's coming at us? Or we're starting to use it to open our imagination and learn to use that to shift our story into a more blissful situation, yeah. So there's so much more going on beyond even what the so-called powers to be are doing to us. They are literally waking us up. They no matter which way they look, they are not going, tried to look past this and they just saw white light because they can only see through to the frequency of fear. And anything above that fear game, which is what we're stepping into, we're starting to step into loving who we are 100%. That ends up being that they can't see us anymore. They can't predict our next moves. Up till now, they could predict our next moves and they could create something outside of us to be able to go with that. So we had telepathy coming back in. Well, or what do? They created the phone, so that the phone would be, it's a good thing because it's kind of like a bridge, but it's still outside ourselves where they can control us using this telepathy game. But and same with TV, everything that's been created outside of us is an actual ability that we have within us once we find balance within ourselves. Yeah.
And what I think the thing that there are two things that have come up since all of this has happened in the last couple of years. First of all, with the lockdowns, what that's done, and a lot of people I know have sadly lost their employment as well as, you know, all the other things. But what it's also done is create an environment where people have had to really understand how important family is. Yeah. And that sometimes we've been so busy on our treadmill of getting to work, doing this, chasing out to do this, this and this, and all of a sudden that's not been there. And they've looked at what really matters, which has been family. And it's about, you know, what is my life without my family? And it's given them a reminder of the focus of what really is important in life. So I feel it's given them to really think about, because normally everyone's chasing and running around families and work and school and all these things that we lose. Sometimes we lose what we're doing it all for. Yeah. And the other thing that I think has been really positive, and I know that it wasn't perhaps meant to be so much so in terms of the internet, where we'll now be able to control people through the internet or whatever. But what it's also done is enable the like-minded souls to connect and to feel nurtured and supported through the same thing, and also to stand up and be strong because they know it's not just them. Yes. So there's been very much a plus, and it's about seeing that plus and seeing how that's made a difference to us through those procedures that were meant to disempower, but actually have had a very positive, empowering impact on them.
That's yes. Wow. No matter what they do, that it's always going to end up that it doesn't matter how much they fight, how much whatever they do, it's always going to end up that we awaken, because that is what source energy was, and they're going against themselves by going against source energy. They are that, so you can't fight what you already are, which is love, wanting to create a new story. Their story was beautiful, great, it is good for them anyway. And humanity learned a lot. Humanity did learn a lot. We learned how to create on earth. We learned how to physically create stuff. There's a lot that we learned. We probably don't even realize yet how much we've learned, but to integrate both of our hemispheres now out of love, because it's all come from that. When Source Energy made its first split, wanted to go on a venture, it split into two. Well, I see that as like the two hemispheres of the human brain. That's how I see it, like that we're the closest thing once we start to integrate and love. Our logic loves our intuition, and our intuition loves our logic, and we start creating something beautiful together. Oh my God, I'm just so excited for this next step. It's going to be beautiful. I can understand it, and it does feel to me very intense, very, very, very intense. There's absolute moments where I'm bawling my eyes out with the intenseness of it all, and the tower moments, one after another until you get it. You know, are you really loving who you are? Absolutely, 100%. It's a huge lesson to go through, but it is well and truly worth it. Yeah. So
for you coming out with this, what is your main intention for doing this now by coming out and putting these kinds of interviews out? What's your main goal, or what is it that you're hoping to achieve?
Well, I know when I was 19, I had a dream of climbing up the hill with everybody else and going through absolutely the same slog of everyone else, needing a break halfway through, just absolutely had enough of everything. And then I got to the very top of that hill, and there was a huge maze in front of us. And everyone turned to me, and I'm like, why would you turn to me? Well, now I have an understanding why they would turn to me. So I feel like my whole journey is to go lose myself in this, amongst all of this, and then to bring humanity back into balance again, to unite their imaginative, intuitive side with their logic, and then say, come from love from both sides so that we can create something new. That's honestly, I mean, and I know that's what I bring up a lot, because that's the essence of us stepping into our actual authentic human power, of us being sovereign, to be able to have the reins in our hands, to be able to create the next step. So my actual journey here is to awaken everybody else to that balance of loving everything. Everything is just an adventure to discover, but are you gifting your power to someone else, or are you taking the reins back and loving who you are 100%, no matter what that looks like to the outside world? Yeah, I'm here to help guide others back to their authentic self, in a nutshell, I suppose. And then, and I mean, I've been on that journey already. They've already shown me the blessings that came out of that journey when I went on it. Like they literally got me to dig up a gold bracelet in the middle of the sand, in the middle of the beach, to go, hello, we want your attention. And like, here I am with this $1,000 gold bracelet going, okay, I think you got my attention. And then they started to teach me how to clear my mind, how to bring in default images in my logical brain, to bring that back into balance, to bring in my imagination, to have that start to conjure up the actual reality that I want to be able to come into, to live that life. And it was really interesting. The more and more I let go of my logic, and the more I came into more balance, I started to have this opening of clairvoyance, where I knew and could predict things that were going to happen in the future. And that all these other different gifts started to come up. Now, I'm not proficient at everything, but they've shown me a little bit of everything. So I've been taught how to, got a telekinesis thing on my, you know, where I did actually move something with my hands on my video, and I videoed it. Like, I have a little bit of everything, where I've talked telepathically to an elder, Cherokee elder, who gave me information telepathically by just holding my hand. Like, I've had a little bit of everything, just so I can awaken other people's gifts in them as well. So that's another part of that as well, because it's just so much more to humanity and our gifts. It's incredible. I'm so excited.
Well, it's wonderful that you are doing what you're doing, because at the moment that's giving other people confidence. Because what I hear all the time, especially with the older models of human, as I call them, they might be reaching their, their 60s or 70s and saying, all my life I've felt different. All my life I've had these things go on and I've never been able to talk about it or share it, and they may say I'm the very first person they'd ever talked about it to. And I feel that's, that's really sad that you've had this awareness all your life and there's been nobody that you can actually feel comfortable enough or safe enough with to share what's going on for you. And I think that individuals like yourself are giving people confidence and support just simply by doing what they on some level have wanted to do.
Yeah, I found I had a lot of intuitive counselling sessions recently. It's just kind of exploded with people waking up and wanting to know a little bit more about themselves and their gifts and everything. But really, Mary, I take my hat off to you, because you did the hard yards. You're one of the pioneers. You're one of the ones that through all of the lower vibrations stood out and went, that's it. I'm so I just almost want to bow down to you and say thank you very much for all of your work, because I'm absolutely impressed how you've held your own integrity through all of this and grounded it all and helped so many in the lower frequencies. I mean, now it's shifted to a more lighter frequency for people like me to come out and actually step into our role. And I know it's all divine timing. I know we all have specific missions and specific timings that we're supposed to be woken. I'm absolutely understand that, but still, you took on a harder role, I think, in the retrospect of jumping out in the middle of all of the mayhem that was going on, and still spoke up about aliens, ETs, star children, indigo children, crystal children, all the stuff that you have done. And so, yeah, thank you so much for all of your work.
Oh, thank you. I would like to say, though, I don't feel like it's, some people have said, you're very courageous. The truth is that when I reached a certain age and I was with people who were dying, one of the things they said to me was often regrets that they hadn't said something or done something. So almost feeling like, I haven't been my true self because I've never been able to do that or felt safe enough. And I decided that my legacy for my children was to be Mary, and not a pseudo Mary with all these masks that so many put on because they want to feel comfortable or safe, or they don't want to upset anyone. And I thought, well, if my kids are going to grieve, at least they're going to grieve the weird and wonderful mum who was a bit of a pain in the neck some of the time and all the rest of it. At least they'll know what they're grieving. Yeah. And that's my truth. And the thing is, I can't say to people coming to me, to speak your truth and be who you've come here to be, unless I'm actually doing the same thing. But the truth is that it's never worried me when other people don't understand, because to me, they don't understand because they don't know what they don't know. So it's not their fault that they don't understand. And if they look on me and think that there's something wrong with me, either I'm developing dementia or I've got some misaligned hormones, that really doesn't matter. I really don't care, because what matters, I'm reaching those that I want to reach, the ones that know what I'm saying. And that really is what matters, is reaching those that are seeking that kind of support and help. And the others, well, they can think what they like about me, because it really doesn't matter to me, does it? You're not going to please
everybody.
Bottom line is, all we have, Bobbie, all we have in the end is our own truth.
That's right.
And if we can't live that, what's the point?
Yeah, I totally agree. I got to that point as well. I was with a not so nice guy, and when I left that relationship, I just stepped into myself and went, that's it. I've tried it their way and I'm no longer doing it. I'm stepping into my power. And when you start to do that, when you just, like you said, just go, that's it, I'm being 100% honest to myself, then this is who I am. And like I've had people in the chat bar that have come up and gone, oh, rah, rah, you're talking a load of nonsense, da. And you know what I do? I just go, sorry, mate, you have to move on. If you don't move on, block. Because I can't, there's no point in dealing with that anymore. I'm interested in helping those that want to help themselves. I've already tried helping those that didn't want to help themselves, and it doesn't work. I end up bending over backwards and hurting myself. So I will, if you're ready to help yourself, I'm here to help you even further. And that's how I see it. Big lesson that one was. I literally woke up and saw myself bending over backwards beside my bed. I've seen a lot of things though. Like my guides are pretty smack in my face if I don't get something. Yeah. No, it's so good to talk to you, Mary. I know 100% we could sit down for absolutely hours, massive conversations, and go off planet and into different vortexes. I know it. But yeah, we're going to run out of time, I suppose. And yeah, so I will say goodbye, but I will definitely, did you want to say anything on anything that's coming up for you, anything that you want to promote?
Well, a new one that's coming up is on Portal to Ascension, which is a 3-day online summit on April the 15th to 17th. And I'm speaking on that, is one of the latest ones. I've done a lot recently anyway, but that's another one. I'll be posting it on my Facebook anyway.
Wow,
but that's all I can say is that I think it's wonderful, Bobbie, that you're doing what you're doing. And it's amazing for me how many people are stepping up now and stepping out and speaking their truth in the way that you're doing. And that to me is the best example of change on this planet, because it's there now. People are doing it. So thank you for all your love, time, and this.
You're very, yeah. Thank you. I don't even, I'll accept that. Thank you. I don't even know how to respond because I'm like, whoa. Yeah. Thank you for your work as well. Yeah, it is an indication, isn't it, Mary? It's a great indication on the fact that we have shifted into something new here. And it's all come from self-respect of our authentic selves. So thank you for aligning yourself with your authentic self, one of the first ones. You're along with just a handful of others in that era in that time. And I'm so grateful that you helped me when I had beings and everything come into my room and share their wonderful messages with me. So I will say goodbye and until next time.
Okay, take care, Bobbie. Lovely to speak with you.
Yes, you too.